Hello, welcome to the Bible study for our end of year message for 2021, titled Whose Battle Is This? The program is brought to you by the Banking Blessings Ministry. My name is Goodluck Ofebu.
And I am Obi Ofebu. God creates every person to represent Him in interactions with others. To be for others what God would be for them if He lived with us in human form. He provides resources to empower every person to perform their responsibilities. Also, He blesses those that do.
If your motivation is to perform the responsibilities and to follow methods and procedures consistent with living in the image of God, then every battle you face is His battle, and He will guide you to victory.
Let's dive right in to learn and understand whose battle is this.
The objective of this Bible study is to understand building faith by living in the image of God.
If you are committed to God's purpose of representing Him in human interactions,
in humility toward God and toward other people,
and you are motivated by the commitment to complete His tasks and accomplish His goals,
then every battle you face belongs to God.
Focus on your human effort, that is, doing what you can humanly do.
God will intervene and release your miracles when and how He chooses.
And He will guide you to victory in every battle.
We discuss examples based on Christ's interactions with disciples during two storms.
From the Gospel according to Mark, chapter 4, verses 35 to 41, and chapter 6, verses 45 to 51.
To start, we summarize the basis for faith.
Seek to fulfill God's purpose always.
In humility, to be His representative among people that He places in your network.
To be a channel for His presence among them.
And for His human interactions with them.
And a conveyor of His image and impact among them.
Then every task and every battle belong to Him.
He will lead you to complete His tasks.
And accomplish His goals.
When and how He chooses.
Next, we summarize faith as a driver for human effort.
Your motivation is to perform your individual responsibilities toward fulfilling God's purpose.
In humility toward God and toward other people.
You are committed to compassion, peace, and righteousness.
And you focus on doing what you can humanly do.
Then, God sees your human effort and wants you to succeed.
Your battle is His battle, and He will lead you to victory.
He will determine if a miracle is needed.
And intervene when and how He chooses.
Let's discuss Christ's interactions with the disciples during a storm on the Sea of Galilee. He had been teaching for a long time using a boat as a platform in Capernaum near the north shore of the lake.
In the evening, Jesus asked His disciples to sail south across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes.
He was in the boat with them but was asleep.
They encountered a severe storm and the boat was filling with water.
The disciples were desperate and afraid, and they awakened Jesus.
He rebuked the storm and it stopped.
However, He scolded the disciples for lack of faith.
The interactions provide lessons regarding faith, human effort, and miracles.
Let us read from Mark chapter 4 verses 35 to 40.
Mark chapter 4 verse 35. That day when evening came, He said to His disciples, "Let us go over to the other side."
Verse 36. Leaving the crowd behind, they took Him along just as He was in the boat. There were also other boats with Him.
We learn two lessons from these verses. First, Jesus asked the disciples to sail to the other side of the lake. Therefore, the goal of sailing to the other side of the lake was his goal. The disciples were working to accomplish his goal when they encountered the storm.
Second, the disciples were not alone. Other boats followed them. Therefore, whatever they did could potentially affect the other boats and their occupants.
Mark chapter 4, verse 37. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped.
Verse 38. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?"
We emphasize two items from these verses. First, they encountered difficulties and threat of failure as they worked on the task.
Second, they shifted focus away from human effort as they sought to awaken Jesus.
Mark 4 verse 39. He got up, rebuked the wind and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down and it was completely calm.
Verse 40. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?"
Let's emphasize two items from these verses. First, Jesus released a miracle. He calmed the storm to clear the way for the disciples to proceed through their mission.
Second, he scolded them for lack of faith, which they showed by shifting focus away from human work.
Let's summarize what we learned based on the disciples' encounter with the storm. Jesus scolded the disciples for lack of faith.
Instead of working diligently through their mission, they shifted focus to seeking to awaken God to their human understanding of the difficulties they faced.
Recognize that the battle belongs to God and He will guide you to victory.
Therefore, focus on doing what you can humanly do.
And God will intervene when and how He chooses.
Work diligently through your mission.
Pray continually as you work diligently.
But do not shift your focus away from your human effort.
For example, in David's encounter with Goliath, he focused on preparing for the battle and prayed as he prepared.
His prayer also served as a sermon and his sermon as a battle cry.
The second storm encounter also occurred in the night on the Sea of Galilee, following a day that Jesus and the disciples interacted with a large crowd by the shore.
The interactions included feeding a crowd of 5,000 men plus others and ended late in the day. Thereafter, Jesus asked the disciples to go ahead of him to Bethsaida on the other side of the lake, and the disciples left in a boat.
Jesus dismissed the crowd and went up on a mountainside to pray.
The disciples encountered a severe storm on their way and walked feverishly to keep the boat advancing toward their destination.
We discussed the events to understand human relationship with God regarding faith, work, and miracle.
Our study is based on the Gospel according to Mark chapter 6, verses 45 to 51.
Mark chapter 6, verse 45. Immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to Bethsaida, while he dismissed the crowd.
Verse 46. After leaving them, he went up on a mountainside to pray.
The disciples' relationship with God while on this task is similar to usual human relationship with God in at least two ways.
First, the disciples were working on a task that God established for them because it was Jesus that sent them to sail to Bethsaida. Second,
God was not with them in human form because Jesus was on a mountainside praying.
Mark 6:47. Later that night, the boat was in the middle of the lake and he was alone on land.
Verse 48. He saw the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them.
We learn from these verses that God sees your human effort.
Jesus could not see the disciples physically because he was on land. They were far on the lake and it was night.
but he saw them straining against the wind.
Therefore, the phrase "he saw the disciples" means God saw them in his way, not the human way, and was aware of their human effort against the storm.
Mark 6 verse 48. Shortly before dawn, he went out to them, walking on the lake. He was about to pass by them.
Verse 49. But when they saw him walking on the lake, they thought he was a ghost. They cried out.
We need to emphasize that he considered their efforts sufficient to get them to the destination, and he wanted to go on ahead of them.
However, the human manifestation of his presence distracted them.
These verses provide the following two lessons.
First, God may determine that your human effort will be necessary and sufficient to accomplish the goals he has established for you.
Second, certain manifestations of God's presence that you may desire could distract you from human effort that God encourages of you.
Mark 6 verse 49 to 50. They cried out because they all saw him and were terrified. Immediately he spoke to them and said, "Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid."
Then he climbed into the boat with them, and the wind died down.
We emphasize that Jesus encouraged the disciples to return to focusing on their human effort.
However, seeing they were distracted, he climbed into the boat and released a miracle to clear the way.
Therefore, we learn from these verses that God encourages you to focus on your human effort to accomplish goals that he has established for you.
He will intervene with a miracle if he determines a miracle is necessary.
What did we learn in this Bible study?
You are committed to representing God in human interactions,
in humility toward God and toward other people.
And the commitment motivates you to compassion, peace, and righteousness.
And seeking to complete his tasks and accomplish his goals.
Then every battle you face belongs to God.
He sees your human effort and difficulties,
and will intervene with a miracle when and how he chooses.
We thank God for bringing us to the end of the year 2021.
Our program on living in the image of God continues next year.
Please join us as we continue learning and sharing God's purpose for human interactions and relationships.
We look forward to sharing with you in 2022 and beyond.
Thank you. God bless you.